children that were killed. So I decided to look at our own situation here in Hendry County. I got with the Superintendent of Schools, Mr. Puletti, and I said, Paul, we have to do something to protect our children. At that time, we had only 4 school resource officers in the entire Hendry County school system, 2 in the middle schools and 2 in the high schools, which left our elementary schools unsecure. So with the help of Mr. Puletti and the Hendry County Board of County Commission, we were able to obtain funding to provide school resource officers for all the schools in Hendry County. These deputies are specially trained, and they're trained in the active shooter programs. They do have their long rifles in the schools with them in a secure location. This allows them to react quickly if something was to occur in a school, such as an active shooter situation. As you know, time is of the essence when something like this occurs. The faster we can respond, the more lives are saved. So we come up to Parkland, and we got to looking again, and I said, you know, we really need to do more. Too many kids are dying. So once again, I got with Mr. Puletti, and we talked about a lot of things. We talked about hardening the schools. We talked about metal detectors. We talked about bulletproof glass, anything you can think of. The problem is those things need to be implemented. Mental health, that's a big one. It needs to be implemented. But the reality of it is that stuff takes time and it takes money. We really don't have either right now. And what I'm worried about is something happening immediately tomorrow. You know, Parkland was too close to home, in my opinion. What we're looking at doing is selecting qualified, capable staff members. Now, I want to make it clear, not necessarily teachers, but these are going to be staff members in the schools. We will take them, we will put them through a background check, same as we do our fully sworn officers, psychological testing, polygraph testing, drug testing. We want to make sure that these people are safe and mentally stable being in our schools with our children. That's the first priority. Once they qualify and get through all those exams and tests, then we will take them and put them through our tactical law enforcement active shooter course. Now, we've actually taken this course and enhanced it. The requirements are actually slightly higher than what is required for a normal, regular deputy. Again, we're doing this because we want to ensure that these people are 100% capable and safe in our schools around our children. We've gotten a tremendous amount of support here in Hendry County for this program. You know, there's a couple people out there that just don't want guns around our kids. And number one, our guns are not going to be around our kids. These teachers are going to be anonymous. They will be carrying concealed. You will never know who has it. So again, the kids are not going to be around guns. That's just not going to happen. However, you know, one thing to think about, if an active shooter was to come in any one of our schools right now and walk on campus and start shooting children, what happens if the first person they kill is our SRO, our deputy there? Then what? Our children are left helpless, defenseless, running for their lives. So we can't leave them to the wolves anymore. We have to take a stance, and we have to take action and do it now. So I think that this program, again, nothing's guaranteed, you know, but we have to take action. The other thing too is deterrent. A lot of these shooters, if they know that there's somebody on the other side that's going to return fire back to them, they're not going to come in. So we're going to do what we can to better protect our children and our babies here in Hendry County. Any questions? Yes, ma'am.
Debbie from Channel 2, Fort Myers. I think addressing the other side, which you said some people in the community have voiced they may not be on board with this. For some of those folks, and we've had conversations with, the guns not being around the children, we get the concealed side of it, but others have this question of the liability. What if kid who's upset or has a behavioral issue figures out who's carrying and they get a hold of that gun, and then that gun was in the school already, and I know the liability thing comes down to the school system, and that's a legitimate concern.
First, and let me address this. First of all, and I forgot to mention this, once they get through the program and they successfully complete the program, I will take them and swear them in as special deputies under Statute 30.09. At that time, they are sworn deputies. They're law enforcement officers. But to answer your question, and my question to them, I've received that question as well, is what's the difference right now? Right now, we have deputies walking around in the schools, open carrying. We've never had an issue with that. Yes, ma'am.
So I heard you and also Superintendent, when we spoke with you yesterday, say not necessarily teachers. Are teachers for sure going to be excluded? Is there, the possibility that some teachers will be carrying weapons?
That would be something I can. Thank you, Sheriff. First of all, with this whole program, I want to make it amply clear, and I tried to make it clear yesterday, this falls squarely into the approval process of the Hendry County School Board. So the school board received this information Tuesday night. They have to do their due diligence. Among their concerns, I'm sure, is going to be the liability question, compensation pieces, and everything else. So this is going to require the school board to establish a set of policies. And under Florida law, the school board establishes school policies. They're also going to have to approve the budget for this program, okay? Under Florida law, that falls within the purview of the scope of duties of the school board. The earliest we can get any of this to the board is going to be March 27th, and that's the earliest. That's not necessarily the time that it's going to go. Now, we have grave concerns about Army teachers. I can't say that they would be automatically excluded, but the concern we have would be the decision a teacher who has 18 to 25 students in their classroom is going to have to make. Do I leave these children and go somewhere else, or do I stay here and protect? So we really don't want them to have that internal debate. However, there are other staff members who we could look at and say, would you be interested in this? Okay. Now, along with this training, we would have the Archangel program, but we also want to have a program where we train first responders on campus so that we don't have to wait for a situation to be cleared before we start rendering aid. Hopefully, as superintendent, I should be worried about test scores and student attendance, not how to prepare for the eventuality, hopefully we never have to deal with it, of children being murdered. So that's the world we're living in. This is one prong of a multi-pronged approach to solving this. We do need to harden our schools. We desperately need mental health programs. There is no mental health office in Hendry County. From where we sit right now, you're 20 miles from the county line to the nearest hospital. So what we need to do is this is an effort to ensure to parents that their children are safe. And this is one of the things we're going to do, but we have already started to do the assessment and evaluation. We started talking about that at the Tuesday board meeting of what we need to do to strengthen our schools. Okay. Thank you.
I want to make something perfectly clear too, is I don't want to do this. But we have no choice. Again, like Paul said, these are the times we're living in. Society has changed for the worse, and we have to compensate for that and do what we have to do to protect our children. So, well,
It's just mostly if you had to pick out the single greatest strength, is deterrence.
I would say a deterrent. The other thing is and hopefully sooner than later we can get these other layered systems of protections in, talking about the mental health, talking about the better fencing, talking about, the better secure doors, locks, that kind of thing. But even with all of those in place, those are not foolproof. So if someone was to get in, and believe me, if someone truly wants to get in, they can get in. But if that happens, we have to have a fallback plan to be able to stop it. And unfortunately, it's going to be with lethal force. Now, I also want to make something perfectly clear, too. In our program that we've had with our SROs, and like I said at the school board meeting the other night, it's very sad because even since I was a child, school resource officers were there to mentor and guide and help children up through the school system. Anymore, our primary concern is their safety. So our policy is, and it always has been, and it's reiterated to them over and over again, if a school or an active shooter situation happens, that deputy's job in the school is to go on a hunt and kill mission. They're looking for him. They have to stop him immediately because they know seconds count.
You talked about the stringency of the enhancement of the training in addition to what active law enforcement is required by the state or entity. For some people, what is that, an hour thing they put in? Like so many hours makes it extended, or is it like just actual training, more tests?
It's the requirement to qualify. Prime example, on the shooting aspect of it, normally they have to pass with an 80%. We're going to require an 85%. Okay? But again, they're going to be given a lot more one-on-one, starting from ground up. When these people, when they qualify and they pass this test, they're going to be proficient with their firearms. They're going to know what they're doing. So, done.
Will these be paid people or employees of the Sheriff's Department?
Again, that's going to fall on the school board and the superintendent. I'll let him address that.
The short answer is that decision has not even been made yet. Okay, they would be Hendry County school employees. Okay, if they fall within the bargaining units that we have, then that's a bargain issue that we have to go to the table and negotiate. If they aren't, then we would probably have to come up with we may have to come up with some additional compensation to ensure that they'd be willing to say yes to this service. Okay?
How would these people get a concealed weapons permit to carry into school under state law?
Okay. State law prohibits civilians from carrying on school campuses. However, law enforcement officers are allowed to carry. So under Chapter 30.09, for special situations such as this, it allows for me to swear them in and make them deputies.
And under that case, don't they have to go through the full law enforcement training?
No, sir. Actually, they don't have to go through any training. If we have an emergency situation, I can swear you in right now and you would act as a deputy for me. But I'm not going to do that. We're not just going to hand teachers or staff members guns and throw them in our schools. We're going to make sure, because liability falls back on me. So I'm going to make sure that when they're in those schools, they know exactly what they're doing.
Who would be paying for the weapons and the permit costs?
The school board. Yes, sir.
How much into the planning is there involving first responders coordinated with the?
We're actually looking at that right now, Raul. We haven't implemented it yet, but that is something that we definitely want to do. Yes, ma'am.
So since you said the weapons and permitting would be paid for by the school board, does that give the school board the right to then take those as they please, since it's their property? Doesn't belong to the individual that's been deputized?
There are many questions. That's why this isn't going to start tomorrow. The board just had an outline of this program presented to them Tuesday, and we have to give them opportunity to perform their due diligence, to ask these types of questions, to feel comfortable with the liability. We have to present them a budget of what this would cost and the scope of services and sequences of what's going to happen. They have to approve all of this before we even are saying we have such a program.
So they'll be the ones to iron out those details and figure out.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. That's what I'm saying. March 27th is the earliest I can put this on the agenda. That doesn't mean that's when it's going to go. Okay, but that's the earliest. Now, in terms of training for first responders, we have people on our staff who train first responders now. So we can actually probably put together a piece of the budget to present to the board to say, here's what we want to have happen. Teachers are nurturers, okay? They're not going to sit back and say, yes, I might be willing to take a life, but they will be willing to say, I will help save a life. And to me, that's just as important as anything else. So that would be.
Why aren't the current resource officers carrying or using concealed weapons at this time?
Why are the current school resource officers carrying concealed?
Well, why aren't they using concealed weapons now or carrying weapons now in the schools?
They are carrying weapons.
I thought they were locked in a locker.
They're long rifle.
Oh, they're rifle. Okay,
They're
so they are
rifle.
carrying. Okay.
Yeah, they're not strapped, militarily style and walking around the school, but they have their sidearm on at all times. The problem is we like to have the upper hand in a gunfight. A lot of these people are using rifles. So normally the policy back before I took office was with resource officers, they kept their high-powered weapon in their car. Well, if something happens in a school, that means they have to run to the car, retrieve their weapon, and come back in. Now they have the option of this or their long rifle immediately accessible. Stephanie?
Sheriff, how many of your archangels would you need on a campus?
We don't know yet, and I don't know yet, and I don't want to announce that.
And my next question would be, is there a possibility of having a campus with no volunteers and then having a campus with heavy volunteers?
There's a possibility.
And so that would still potentially leave some of our schools without.
Yeah. Well, we'll work through that somehow. So.
Are the schools going to do some study on if there's any effect psychologically to the staff or the students of knowing that there's some guns on campus that are anonymous that they don't know about?
I'm not sure at this time. I want to say something though, that, these active shooter situations and as far as law enforcement goes in the defense of our schools is an evolution. Back before Columbine, let me tell you how it worked. If something happened in a scenario like that, law enforcement officers responded, and then they sat and waited on their backup. And then they, depending on the situation, if it was a single gunman, with a pistol, then they might go try to find him. But if it was an active shooter situation, they would actually just set up a perimeter and wait on the SWAT team to come in. You're talking 20 minutes, 30 minutes at that time. Well, everybody's dead. Then after Columbine, everybody in law enforcement woke up and said, wait a minute, that's not working. Too many people are dying. So now the first deputy on scene gets there, they go in on a hunt and kill mission. Well, that's still not working because an amazing response time is 3 minutes. So then they all started trying to put resource officers in schools, which is what we do, which they can act immediately. The first gunfire, the first scream, they can respond to that threat. However, again, I'm looking down the line. I'm looking at the evolution of this. What happens if that gunman comes on campus and kills our deputy? Now we're back an evolutionary step. Now we have to wait on that response time from road patrol. The Parkland shooter was in and out, killed 17 in 3 minutes. The average active shooter is only in a school 5 minutes.
So would they be able to cooperate, like by some sort of radio with the SRO in the event of an active shooter? Would they be able to contact all volunteers?
Listen, this program, we're working out all these details. We have a lot of homework to do yet, okay? But you have to get it started if you want to get it done. There's a lot of questions like that we've thought about, but we just have to work out. So, yes.
Sheriff, is the Coulson Police Department at the table on this discussion? Because I know they respond to the Coulson area in that municipality. Are you guys working in conjunction with them to formulate your plans?
That's a totally different aspect. They'll be with us as far as just their response, because they don't have anything to do with the security of the school as far as the resource officers right now. They don't have the authority to swear in anyone as far as to make them special deputies. So no, not at this time.
You guys have mentioned that. Sorry, I lost my train of thought there for a second. But with the deputies being in the school, you talk about funding in the Facebook video we can't just add 5 more deputies to each school. Right. We can't afford to suddenly put bulletproof glass everywhere. Right. So the motivation is the safety, and we want to prevent. But when it comes down to dollars and cents, a lot of this has to do with what can we do to not be in increased debt or whatever it is for the school board side of things. But you guys, it's hard to get people to want to be law enforcement officers if they're not career. Well, and so that's a thing too, because you mentioned it in Facebook that we're not going to get this. Right. What else do we have option-wise?
And it is. It's hard to get people to become law enforcement officers. Again, society has changed. It's a dangerous job. But you have to remember, these kids are in our classrooms every day. I'm sorry, the teachers are in our classroom with our children every day. They love these kids. We've had some response. I've had some response of people in the schools wanting to do this because they know that when it comes down to it, they want to be able to protect those children and themselves. People can say what they want to. The Parkland, the coach that jumped in front of the children, why did he do that? Why? To save their life. He knew he was going to die. Now ask yourself this, what if he was armed? Could he have stopped that shooter? It's a good possibility he could have, and saved his life and the lives of those kids, at least more lives. So that's what we're looking at. The number one thing here is deterrent. Until we can get the proper defense mechanisms set in place physically at our schools. We have to have something to let these people know, hey, if you come in here, you're going to die. And that's what it's going to be.
Have you looked at the probabilities of an incident of a shooter in Hendry County School?
No, sir. Don, we hope it never happens. But again, you know, Parkland's an hour and a half away from us, and
That is one of the safest, richest schools in Florida. And so the probabilities, you can't sit and say it'll never happen, or it may not happen. So I would rather be prepared some way to prevent than just be the one who said yes to what's happened here. Because you need to keep in mind too that at Parkland, the school had done everything it was supposed to do. But somewhere in any kind of, we have done extensive studies, believe me, since Valentine's Day, on what do these situations look like. One, the shooter has been disenfranchised some way, okay? They no longer feel a connection to the school or a positive connection to the school. Secondly, there's been some sort of system failure, okay? That was very clear to what happened in Parkland, okay? So we need to keep that in mind, that there was a system failure, there was a disenfranchisement. The boy had been removed from the school, but that didn't prevent him from coming back to the school, okay? And he came back with a gun, okay? Those are the things you have to bear in mind. So what we want to do is to keep it so that we are not making people angry at the school, and that we want to be the safety net, okay? We don't want to be the agency that did have the breakdown. And even with mental health services, with this shooter in Fort Lauderdale, he turned 18 and he refused all further mental health service. Okay, he was 19 years old. Now, people have been asking if I can jump back to something. We are purposefully going very slowly in this process, so that I don't know how many people we have to say, yes, we'll do it, because the board has not said we can do it. Okay, so I don't want to get ahead of the board until they come through and say, here's what's going to happen. There is a possibility, just stop and think about it. Elementary teachers and personnel are extremely nurturing people. All teachers nurture. But the older the child gets, the less that becomes evident. So I would expect that at the elementary level, we would have fewer personnel say, yes, I'll do it, than at the secondary level. Yes?
Your district is becoming proficient at keeping kids in until they graduate.
Yeah.
That is part of the goal.
That is
of
part.
avoiding disenfranchising them.
That's exactly the whole piece. We took it on the chin a few years ago when we started doing our discipline differently. But that wasn't because we were fearful of a shooter. That was because we knew it was the best thing to do for students. Okay? In the end result, it's actually made schools safer, and we've improved the graduation rate by keeping them there. The first reaction is get rid of all the bad kids. We'll get rid of them. Okay, and even if you expel a student, you have to understand they're coming back to your school eventually anyway. You know, after a year, then what? Okay, so we take a whole different view of what we're doing, and then a year and a half or so ago, when we lost our mental health, we expanded what we were doing. Is it perfect? No, but we provide more services more frequently to students than we ever have before. Yes?
We're talking a lot about mental health and the unavailability of it, and I'm looking at the 66 hours of special training, which looks really good. But what kind of mental health training or like screening are these individuals going to go through?
Well, they're going to have to go through a psychological. But that's not the prong I'm looking at, because you have to understand that as we speak in Tallahassee, we might be getting more money for safe schools, for mental health, and all of that kind of thing that goes in with this. Okay, so that mental health issues aren't just for those kids who might be shooters. You have children who suffer some sort of trauma. They lose a parent. You know, their home is blown away in a hurricane. Things of that nature. They need that kind of service, and we need to do what we can to eliminate whatever stigma is involved with receiving mental health services. So this particular program isn't necessarily the mental health piece that we're talking about. This is one prong, mental health is another, hardening schools is another.
Right. What is the process that these people are, the psychological process, what is that like?
That would be,
These volunteers, they'll be going through the same hiring process as any deputy that applies here. They're going to go through the psychological, they'll go through the full background, the drug screen, and the polygraph.
Will they be continuously evaluated? And I
Yes,
asked
ma'am.
because at another meeting, parents, teachers were concerned that if,
That is one thing we did discuss, is a regular random drug screens for them, and maybe a yearly psychological.
Are the students in the schools safe today?
How can you answer that? They're as safe as they can be for what we have. Again, we have a deputy in every school that's ready to respond and react. But again, I wish I had 10 of them in every school. Sorry.
I understand that you're still hashing out the details, but you mentioned how the resource officer has another concealed weapon in a locker. Can you go over the details if staff?
No, I don't want to go into details with that, I don't want that information out there in the wrong hands. But it is accessible and it is secure,
It's, okay.
yes.
So about the students being safe today, is there training that everybody, that your law enforcement and school board employees have already had for signs to look out for? With Parkland, there were, we look back and saw, well, there was this phone call, there was this warning. Has there been training for that?
Talk about in the schools?
Yes, in the schools, or how to respond?
yes. The services that we have, I talked about how we had changed the way we're doing things, okay? So that in the past 2 or so years, when a student is dangerous, they're not on campus, okay? We have removed them from the campus. But our services still go to that student regardless of where they are. As a matter of fact, we've had to go to some schools and say, wait a second, that is a dangerous situation, that child needs to be sent home, where we then send instruction to the house, okay? Because of what we're doing, we know who they are, the Sheriff's Department knows who they are, DJJ knows who they are, Department of Juvenile Justice, and so on and so forth, far better than we've ever had it before.
We have a risk assessment process that we use for every situation that warrants a level of concern. You have students who present a harm to themselves, and then you have students who may present a harm to others at different times in any school district. And we have protocol for that. We are currently re-examining all of that. We've done quite a bit of training over the last few years with that, and we continue to do that and look for the very best protocol and procedures that we can to make schools as safe as we can on that prong, because that is very different than what the sheriff is talking about.
We received a statement yesterday from the Hendry County Education Association, essentially the union for teachers, and they said that right now it's premature to infer that teachers would be the ones carrying this, or carrying these concealed firearms, and that they're really waiting on the official word from state and state funding. So how is that relationship dynamic going to work with making sure all parties, particularly those that represent probably 90% of your staff in the schools, is on board with this in a cooperative way where that conversation is good?
The conversation is going to be good regardless of how it goes. I mean, I want to make that perfectly clear, but the issue would be that if they are not in that bargaining unit, then we don't have a problem, okay? So we have 2 bargaining units, one represents teachers, one represents non-instructs. Despite all that, there are other personnel who are not in either one of those units, so that we don't have to. If we wanted to, like, arm a teacher, we would have to go, because that's a working condition, to HCEA, the teachers union, and discuss what that's going to look like, how it's going to happen, all sorts of things. So that would be another impediment to us quickly enacting this program, because that's a lengthy process.
So it would be advantageous to have personnel that are not tied up with the union, to be the volunteers that would step up.
It would be advantageous not to use teachers, because not just because of the union involvement, but because of the pull on teachers and their emotions and what it is they went into teaching for. Okay, but you have to understand, in our staff, on our staff right now, we have numerous veterans with military service. We have active law enforcement officers teaching in our classrooms. All right, so we have those there. We have personnel who also serve in auxiliary positions with law enforcement agencies. So it's there. It could be on a case-by-case basis. For example, with a teacher who may be a law enforcement, we can go one-on-one to the union and say, okay, let's come up with a decision on this person. Or we could then bargain the entire wall-to-wall, saying, here's what it looks like when we ask teachers to do this. Okay? I expect, when I say we, there are going to be teachers who say, I don't want to do that. I really think that's going to happen.
Big picture, what type of timeline are you looking at? Because I know you said the earliest possible meeting would be the 27th, and then how long would it take to train and evaluate? So big picture.
Well, I think by then we should be prepared to start training rather quickly, pretty immediately.
If you have the meeting on the 27th, you'd be able to start training?
Probably right after, yes ma'am.
So by next school year, do you think it would be?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, by next school year.
Yes.
The reason I'm hedging on the 27th is because that's also the date that we have the State Board of Education coming to Hendry County to meet. So I'm not sure, obviously, we have to prioritize, but we also have to be realistic and we fit all this in our day. Okay, so if that's not the day, then it'll be the first meeting in April that we bring this to. And it also depends on how much time do we need to get everything to the board that they need to make a proper decision. See, this is just a presentation. They then have to figure out the costs, the liabilities, who's going to do it, how many, and so on and so forth.
Who will prepare those facts for the board?
We do. We work, the board does the budget, the board does the policy, we do, through me, I'm the secretary to the board. Then what they ask, I'd go to our staff and say, okay, let's put this stuff together. And we're already starting that process in anticipation of what the board wants. The board's going to ask for more. I know that.
Okay, we're going to do one more question.
Just basically the parent aspect of this, the getting the information disseminated. We have public comments, we all go to these meetings and cover them, but really that educational element, obviously the parents that are on board with this are likely, maybe firearms carriers themselves, so, but where is that element going to be of making sure parents new to the area, old to the area, are really educated on this before a decision could be made by the board or is weighed by the board. So I think parents are ultimately who you guys care about as much as the kids.
If I may, I think we rely on you guys a lot for that, to put it out, what it is. And so I don't think that's going to be an issue. Also, social media is big around here. We're a smaller county as well, so word travels fast. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much.
Thank
Yeah.
you.